Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. So today's game is a title that I've brought up many times and I've mentioned numerous times within this series itself, mainly when I'm talking about arcade style beat 'em ups. That game in question is Streets of Rage, but I'm going to be covering all 4 Streets of Rage games. I just decided I'm going to break up each game into its own episode, but we're going to be starting today with Streets of Rage 1. So with that being said, let's take a trip back to 1991. Streets of Rage, which is also known as Bare Knuckle in Japan, was one of Sega's most popular game series from the 1990s, right there with games like Sonic the Hedgehog and Golden Axe, and it has a very high fan base still today. The series would start in 1991 with the first game, and then it would conclude in 1994 with the third game being basically the first ending to the series, because we didn't get a fourth game for the longest time. However, Sega did try and get a game off the ground and it just never happened. It never panned out. And the one time that they actually did get a game from Streets of Rage as a new game was actually Fighting Force. Yes, Fighting Force started off as Streets of Rage 4 and then transitioned into a completely different game because Sega was trying to get a game made, and then another company was like, hey, we're going to do it this way, and Sega just said, nah, not going to do that. So it just didn't happen, and it turned into Fighting Force, which I will cover in the Streets of Rage 4 episode, as well as a future episode for Fighting Force. Now, I think what gave Sega the push to finally get Streets of Rage 4 made was all the fan remakes that were going on throughout the years. There was the Beats of Rage engine, which actually took a lot of other games that were not arcade beat-em-ups and turned them into an arcade beat-em-up, such as Sonic the Hedgehog and Resident Evil, which is pretty interesting. But I think Sega saw that and said, hey, these guys are over here making these games, and we're getting nothing out of it, so why don't we make our own game and give it to the fans, give the fans what they want. And I want to give Sonic a lot of credit there too, because Sonic Mania was a fantastic reboot, and I want to say that Sega saw how popular that was and how it turned out, that they were like, we can do this with Streets of Rage also, because there are still fans there and they have been asking us for many years to get a 4th game made. Now, the interesting thing about Streets of Rage 4 though was that the development team was actually the same team that worked on the Wonder Boy remaster remake, and that game was awesome as well. So I want to give them credit there as well for doing a great job on that and giving them the idea to make a Streets of Rage 4. But we're talking about the first game today, and I want to see how this game holds up today, if it's still just as fun as it was back in the 90s when I used to play it, and if you should consider playing it yourself. So with that being said, let's take a look at some gameplay and see how it holds up. As I mentioned before, the first entry was released all the way back in 1991, and it was very much inspired by Final Fight, because Sega really wanted to get their own version of that game over on their consoles. And when I say inspired, I mean the characters look almost the exact same. Cody and Axel look almost the same, with the white shirt, the blue jeans, the white shoes, except Cody doesn't have a bandana. Some of the enemies are almost the exact same as the enemies in Final Fight, and then some of the bosses are almost the exact same as some of the bosses within Final Fight. But they are slightly different, and I remember back in the 90s, a lot of people were like, oh, Streets of Rage is better, no, Final Fight's better. I was indifferent. I didn't care either way. I enjoyed both games. However, I was more of a Streets of Rage fan just because I never really got to play Final Fight when I was younger. Not until I was almost an adult did I actually get to play that game for the first time. Yeah, I can see where the comparisons come in and where people didn't like Streets of Rage for one reason, or where some people didn't like Final Fight for some reason. It's all the same to me. You also get to play as 3 characters, and I already mentioned Axel, but the other 2 characters are Adam and Blaze, who are tasked with defeating the evil crime boss that wants to destroy the city and take over the city, known as Mr. X. No. Not that Mr. X. I know what you're thinking, but no, not that Mr. X. The game, however, does follow your standard beat-em-up formula, starting from one side of the screen, moving from the left to the right, and then the final stage actually has you going from the right to the left, so it's a little bit different. It's kind of cool, but it's your same formula. You start, go through, fight enemies, fight the boss at the end of the level, go on to the next level. Simple as that. But I do want to talk about some of the bosses, because they can be very, very challenging and prove to be a big problem for you in this game. Not so much in the other games, but in this game in particular, they are very much an irritation, and they can cause you a lot of trouble. This is where things tend to get a little bit tough. Yes, you can defeat the regular enemies, no problem, no sweat, defeat them easily, but the bosses can pack a mean punch and prove to be very challenging for you, like I said before. This is because a lot of the times the bosses, they just jump around and they move around too much, so your window of attack is very small, and you got to be careful when you attack them, because if you miss, they can end up hitting you and causing more damage to you, and you'll get more damage than you do dealing damage towards the bosses, so you want to be careful of that. 2 bosses in particular that I did not like were actually Big Ben, the guy that spits out the fire, because he'll go diagonally from one side of the screen to the other and he'll disappear from the screen, and you're thinking, okay, he's going to come over from the right hand side, so I got to be able to attack him there. But when he comes from the right, he's spitting fire and he'll immediately hit you, no problem, and you're just like, okay, I just took a massive hit from this guy and all my health is almost gone. So you want to be careful with him, and the moment of opportunity to hit him is actually when he is on screen and getting ready to move forward towards you. And when you see his mouth start opening, that's when you want to go and hit him, and just hit him as much as you can to knock him out and defeat him and everything. If you have any specials, please use them on this guy. Save them for this guy, and I'll talk about the specials in a little bit. But the other boss fight is actually the twins, Mona and Lisa. Similar situation, the window of attack for them is very small, and they're constantly jumping around. Yes, they look like Blaze. I'm going to get that out of the way. They look like Blaze because it's a palette swap. Instead, they're green and blue, and she's red. So just keep that in mind, that if you're playing as Blaze, it might be a little confusing as who's fighting who. That's why they have the color differences on them. But they're jumping around and constantly flipping and kicking and all kinds of stuff, and you're just sitting here going, how am I supposed to hit these two? And I figured it out that you have to do a jump kick at them, because if you're trying to just punch them regularly, it won't work. You won't get the punch. They will always jump over you. So you want to always be jumping and kicking at them, because 9 times out of 10 you will hit them. It's just that fight's going to take a little bit longer if you're not careful. You just want to be careful and try not to get hit by them. Plan your dodges, plan your moves beforehand when you're fighting them, because yes, they will hit you, and it does suck. And Sega did bring this back in Streets of Rage 3 with another similar boss fight. It wasn't fun, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it then. I didn't like it in third game. It was not fun. I'm glad they didn't do that with the fourth game, but we'll talk about those games later on. Now, they did pull a Mega Man with this game, where when you're in the final level, you're actually going through and fighting enemies as well, trying to get to Mr. X, but you also fight the bosses all over again. So this is a fairly long level, because you go through a stretch of the level fighting enemies, and then it'll stop, boss shows up, go through another stretch, stop, boss shows up. So the last bosses you fight are the twins again. It's the order of bosses you fight. So you start with the boomerang guy, then the Wolverine looking guy, then the wrestler who looks like Ultimate Warrior, then Big Ben, then I forgot the other boss, but then you fight the twins again. So you won't have your specials in this last level. They do not give you specials here, so you want to use your specials on those bosses as well. The twins and Big Ben when you're fighting them in the regular levels. When you're fighting them in the final mission, you can't use the specials. They take them away, and it kind of sucks, because in the later games they actually let you use them again. And I think that was a complaint a lot of fans have, was like, hey, why can't we use the special attacks in this level? You just took them away from us. So what really sucks about this, and I'm kind of doing the pros and the cons in one thing here, but what really sucks about this is that when you're in the last level, if you're just getting destroyed left and right, when you finally get to Mr. X and you're down to no health at all, no lives, you're likely not going to be able to defeat him, because he is just as tough as all the other bosses. He actually has a machine gun. I think in this game he has a machine gun as well. In the second game he has a machine gun, and he's just knocking you around left and right. So he's one you really want to be careful with, and you really want to conserve and preserve your health as much as you can before you get to him, because his boss fight is insane. I hate it. I have almost never been able to beat this game without cheating. So that is one way to get through this game, is to use the cheat codes. Give yourself 9 lives, play it on easy, go through the game, fight everybody you can, and just take your time with all the bosses. Try not to run out the timer though, because that will lead to a game over. I'm just saying, that will lead to a game over no matter where you are in the game. Timer runs out, it's game over for you. Aside from the enemies though, you do get your usual food items by punching trash cans and benches and phone booths. And why there's apples and sandwiches and hot dogs and pizzas and drinks in there, I will not know. That's how every game like this works. You punch a trash can and, oh look, there's a hamburger. I'm gonna eat that trash hamburger and get my health back up. I don't think that works in real life, so don't try that, but that's just something that all these games do, where the food items are hidden inside unusual items like trash cans and phone booths, and you're just like, what in the world is this going, what is this doing? What's going on here? They do help. They do give you a good chunk of health back, so that is one good thing. And then another thing too is, as you're going through the levels, you will occasionally come across a life up. I didn't see very many. I saw maybe one every couple levels. I saw a life up and a special up, so it adds an extra special and an extra life to your inventory, which is very nice to have, very handy to have. But like I said, save those specials, and the specials actually really are pretty cool. Each character has a different one. I usually play as Axel in the first game, and his is basically a stinger missile, the screen pans all the way to the right, or to the left, I'm sorry. The cops show up, shoot a missile over to defeat your enemies, and when it lands, it does a ring of fire around the level. And this is good to use when you're bombarded and surrounded by so many enemies, and you really just want to get rid of all of them at once. You use that, it'll knock them out all at once. It basically does everything that a special attack does in these types of games, like Golden Axe, where it takes up the screen and engulfs everybody in flames. This one destroys everybody, and I believe Blaze is like a raining hail of bullets or grenades or something. Axel's, I don't know what it is because I never really played as Axel in the first game. I didn't like his control style in this first game. You do want to keep in mind though, like I said before, you're very limited to your special attacks. I believe you get one per level unless you find the extra ones. Then you really want to conserve any of those that you have. And like I said, I recommend using those for the bosses at the end of each level because yes, it will knock off a chunk of their health, but it won't kill them completely. So use it sparingly. Hold on to it if you can, and use it at the end of the level for each level. It will help you a lot with the boss fights, and especially if you have 2 or 3 or whatever, use them all at the end of each boss fight. I don't know if they carry over. I cannot remember if they do carry over. I think each level does give you a new one, and I want to say if you do pick up one from a level, it carries over, but I cannot remember because I know in games like this, they don't really do that. They don't really carry your special abilities over from level to level to level. It's either you get them all in one level or you don't. But guys, we are coming to the end of the episode, so I do want to give my final thoughts on this game now, what I think about it, and if you should play it yourself. Okay, so we had some pros and we had some cons. I don't want that to scare anybody off from playing this game, and I really think everybody should still give this game a chance. Check it out for yourself, see what you think, gather your own opinions, because the game is still very much fun to play. I still enjoy this game to this day, especially if you enjoy arcade style beat 'em ups like this, such as Gaideko, Fighting Force, Final Fight, The Takeover, which released a few years ago, Golden Axe, The Punisher, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Aliens vs. Predator. All those games, if you enjoy them, you're going to enjoy this one as well. So definitely check it out. It is available pretty much everywhere. If you have a system, Xbox, PS4, PS3, 360, Nintendo Switch, even the 3DS, maybe not the 3DS, but you can get the game on all the other systems. And I do recommend getting the collections on the PS4 or the Xbox or the Switch because they're easier to get those games. The physical copies of the Sega Genesis cartridges can run a little bit high from what I've seen lately. So those, if you can find them for a decent price, definitely go for them. But I really recommend getting the other ones because you actually can get achievements and in-game trophies and everything for playing those games. The PS3 Ultimate Collection is actually a little harder to find from what I've seen. I got it back in 2009, but I have not seen it lately in any stores, especially like GameStop. They're not going to have it. But if you go to like a retro shop, they might have it there. It's easier to find at those kind of places, and probably Amazon or something like that. But it's another one that's kind of up there in price from what I've seen. That's why I recommend going to look for that one in an actual store where you might have a better chance of getting it for a decent price. But with that, guys, we've come to the end of the episode. Before we leave, though, I do want to ask you, what is your favorite Streets of Rage game, and who is your favorite character to play as in Streets of Rage? There is no wrong answer, so let me know down in the comments below. I would like to thank you again for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I always enjoy making these videos because it gives me a chance to revisit the past and introduce these older games to a newer audience who might be interested in trying them out for themselves. But it also gives me a chance to bring back the memories to those older fans who used to play these games back in the 90s and early 2000s, such as myself. But as always, guys, be sure to hit that thumbs up and ring that bell to be notified of when videos go live. Share with your friends and family, and I'll see you next time.